Hey guys.
Hello.
How is everybody?
Doing good.
Yay! Welcome to day 3 of San Japan. So much hype. I love your energy. So my name is Kenzie. You can also call me Kenpai. So I'll be talking about the basics of altering your clothing for cosplay. I encourage questions at any point. If you have a question, you can just raise your hand. If I go off on something and if something just doesn't make sense and you want me to like explain it a little better or talk about it in a little bit, try to explain it in a simpler term, please just let me know. To get a feel, does anybody here sew? Yes? Okay, that's a lot better. Last time I did this panel, nobody knew how to sew and I was like, oh no! So for people who don't know, I just pulled up a picture because it's not in my thing. So for the most basic tool of altering is a seam ripper. This is your seam ripper. It'll be your best friend when you're doing any kind of alteration. Sewing in general too. If you are a sewer and you make all your stuff, you probably see this and want to cry a little on the inside. So I'm going to get started here. So things that you might need to alter, so things that might be too small for you. Say you buy a cosplay and it just doesn't fit. No matter how you try to put it on, you can corset yourself, you can squeeze yourself into it, and it's just way too small, it's too tight, you can't move, you can't breathe. If it's too big, it's really baggy. You know, let's say you bought what is it, those cat suits, or the morph suits, there we go. And it's like really baggy on you, but you need it to be more form-fitting. I already talked about it, baggy in some areas, if it's just loose. If your pants just don't fit you right, you need to tailor it a little bit. A different design is needed. I know I've bought some clothing articles and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to cut this, I want to change the shape, I want to take it in here, add some darts. I'll explain half of these things. But so, you know, if you just want to change how it looks in general, it's not impossible, it's definitely doable. It's just, you know, taking the time to know what you need to do and how to do it in order to be able to accomplish that. So what can you alter? Everything. Anything that is a fabric, you can probably find some way to alter it. People have altered in simple manners, such as like putting on patches and appliques, to very big things. I've seen like baggy loose t-shirts become like these cute, like form-fitting peplum tops. I hope you guys know what that is. That's where it's like kind of like one of those flowy skirts around the waist kind of looking things. But you can alter pants, shirts, dresses, skirts, jackets, even other things like gloves and capes and so on and so forth. You can sew it, you can alter it, you can change it any way you want, any way you can dream. You can, at the bottom it says you can add or subtract to any garment. It's feasible, it's doable. Some are more complicated than others. Some take you more time than others. Some are, you know, a load of math, and some are just, sew that seam and done. Not all alterations are the same. So as I said earlier, some take longer, some are shorter. Some of the most basic alterations that you can do are hemlines, so the edges of your shirts, your skirts, your pants, those are hems. Darts are, the most common darts you will see are on dresses, usually in the breast area, those seams that are right around that area. Your generalized seams, so that does include your hemlines. The sides of your shirts are a seam as well. Patches, I know patches are big on decorative for jackets. I think the first thing off the top of my head are those varsity jackets in high school that the football and the band kids wear. And you buy all those crazy expensive patches to put them on. Panels are usually added when you have a garment that's too small, so you're adding in extra fabric. It's called a panel of fabric. And decorations in general, whether you're adding on lace, beading, you're taking away something to add in a different kind of fabric. Just for decorative purposes. Hems. So in the most simple terms that I can show in an image, skirts. Skirts are definitely the easiest, pants too, are the easiest to hem. So your hemline is how long you want something. You can do this on jackets as well, shirts as well. It's just changing the length of it. In terms of alterations, this is probably the simplest thing that you can do. That's very quick and very easy, that anyone of any skill level can do. So you can see on my picture to the left, it shows that different length of skirt. And you can go from floor length all the way to, micro, mini. It just varies on how you want to change that length of skirt, where it starts and where you want it to end. You definitely want to be wary of the words are evading me today. You want to be aware of some extra when you hem your edges. So if you say, if you have a skirt that's ankle length and you want it to go to, we'll say, knee length, you have to still add on, leave a little extra before you cut it, because you want to hem it. So you'll have to roll the fabric back so you don't see that raw edge and it doesn't fray on you. So you want to make sure you leave, I like, as a good grace for me, because I just kind of cut and go, I like to leave an extra inch. That makes me feel safe, and I can always take off a little extra if I feel like it's necessary later. But that way, if you cut it, we'll say, like, if you try to go to a mini length, it's a very short skirt, if you cut it to exactly that length and then you hem it and you lose that 5/8 of an inch to an inch in your hem, that could end up being a little too short for comfort. You might expose a little more than what you want. I have very sadly done that in the early stages of my sewing experience, and I was really, really sad that a cosplay I was making, I had exactly enough fabric and I cut it just a smidge too short, and I had to go out and buy all new fabric because I did not need to show my backside to the whole world. So some of your other hems too on the right picture shows different kinds of skirts. Again, in the most simple version that I can show you, is just skirts are very easy to change. But you have a whole plethora of different styles and types of skirts that you can go through. If you start with a really long dress, whether it's gathered or it's straight, the type of skirt can make it really easy or really difficult depending on to alter it. If you have a gathered skirt where it has a lot of layers and a lot of fluff, you can undo that. You have so much fabric to work with. If you want a straight skirt that isn't as fluffy, you adjust it and add various seams to make it form-fitting, so on and so forth, to just change everything, and you can make a whole different type of skirt by the end of your project. Darts are another very, very simple alteration that you can do. Darts was one of the first thing I did when I would go to the thrift store and I would buy shirts for a cosplay. And darts were something that I would add. Sometimes I bought men's shirts because, I couldn't find the color that I wanted. And, this random men's shirt in like an extra, extra large is the right color, so I guess I'll just, cut it up and, re-sew everything into my size. And darts were definitely very helpful for me at that time when I was very new. And so there are a ton of different darts here on this image. Some of them are not very common, some of them are very, very common. Your most common ones are probably I was thinking about my lesson rights for a second there. So the top right image and then the middle right image are probably some of the most common ones on a shirt. And then the bottom left and the bottom right dart, they are probably the most common for dresses. You can do these on the front or back of your garment. So like men's suits tend to be tailored in the back. They have like darts to make it a little more form-fitting. Since men's shoulders tend to be wider than women's shoulders. Women obviously have breasts, so they have darts usually on the breast line as well, because you're larger at your breast area and then you get smaller at your waistline So you add those darts to be able to showcase your form, your own physical body type. Seams. There are 5.5 million different kind of seams. Half of these seams you don't even need to think about. They definitely aren't something that you would do in your beginning stages, but this is just kind of an image to show that there are so many different ways that you can seam it, that you can, change the edging, how you want to hide the edges of your fabric. You want to make sure you close those edges, because if it frays, it can come unraveled and it can get to your stitching, and you don't want that. So your most basic one is literally the top left image. It's just a plain seam. It's a single stitch, and it makes your seam, and it doesn't hide anything, but it's on the inside of your fabric. You can do that. If you're altering and adding in a dart, then you won't have to worry about the raw edges, because you make that dart and then you've got that extra fabric on the inside. You've got some of these other more complicated stitches, which if anyone is curious about them, I can definitely explain them. But you can definitely use a lot of these if you use your sewing machine. A French seam is one that I love for sheer fabrics, very see-through fabrics, because the seam will go from the outside to the inside, and it tucks everything in really nicely, and you don't have to worry about the fabric rolling on you. Whereas like a top stitch seam, or even the double top stitch seam, which I'm sure it's hard to read, so I'm sorry guys. But the second one on the left and the second one on the right, those are typically seen on your pants. So if you look at the side of your pants, you will see like a single or a double stitch on that line. So those kinds of stitches are very common for your pants. And that makes it significantly more stable and secure, because on pants there's a lot more tension on that fabric. It pulls a lot harder because you're sitting, you stand up, you sit down, your own bodily anatomy. You stretch that fabric, whether you're thin or you're larger or average size. Every single pair of pants does this. And you wear down on them, whether you do yard work or you're doing sports or something. You wear down at that fabric. So to keep those stitches from just unraveling and making big holes. I'm sure someone in this room has had the experience where you bend over and your pants rip at your crotch. Yeah, you have that horrifying experience because there was a lot of tension, so those seams or the fabric just ripped right there. So you would want to do the exact same stitch and make sure you just make it really secure so it doesn't happen. Or if the fabric itself ripped, you might need a new pair of pants because the fabric's just very worn. Patches, as I described earlier, I've seen, at least me, I don't know about everyone else, but I've seen kind of the trend of patches coming back on jackets, very decorative, adding on like whatever style or theme that you like. So that is a form of altering because you are changing how it looks. Excuse me. So you can add them in very easy forms, such as your iron-on patches that you just want to put a decoration on, or like with the like with the right picture, you see those patches on the pants. Those are typically done for holes. So if you tear up your jeans and you say, "Oh man, I actually didn't want this hole here. I want to cover it up, and I don't want my pants to get ripped more." You can add those in. You can hand stitch it on. You can use your sewing machine to stitch it in. Both are still viable and secure in its own way. But those are the most two common forms of patches, and you can do the same on jackets. That style is also slowly coming back, but I've seen it here and there where they have those elbow patches. I believe it's usually made of a leather-like material, because when you're rubbing your elbows against something or you're hitting them, you can wear down the fabric there. So those patches are there in order to prevent that wearing of the original fabric, the breakdown of the jacket, so you have it longer. Panels. So as I said, for panels, And this is a very simple image that I can show for it. Panels are fabric that you add in to a garment of any kind. It could be a shirt, jacket, dress, skirt, so on and so forth. I've added in my own panels before because I was very silly and did my measurements wrong. And so it ends up being a couple inches too short. I literally have a cosplay where I added a panel in, and I look at it and I'm like, I can't believe I did that to myself, but here we are. But panels aren't inherently bad. They can also be used as a stylistic purpose, or they can even be used in your own design. Some panels are purposeful, and that's okay. Some you need to add in because you literally just need the garment to fit, and that's totally okay too. Depending on what you like, you can find the same fabric. If you're unable to find the same fabric, you can try to find a similar, or you can try to make it decorative then and make it purposeful and use a different fabric to kind of add to it and make it into your own style. I have a friend who years ago purchased a Zelda cosplay from Legend of Zelda. And it came in and it was significantly too small for her. It was about I think it was 5 or 6 inches too small. And she got someone to help put in a panel, and they put a panel actually into the back, and they basically turned the dress into a corset style dress instead. Yeah, and it still turned out absolutely beautiful. They couldn't get the original fabric, so they found a fun, pretty fabric instead to add into the back for decorative purposes. And it looked like a professional, garment. It looked like it was always meant to be there. It looked wonderful. So adding in a panel, some people might think, oh no, it's bad. It'll be ugly. And that's not the case. It can look amazing still, and you can still make it work and still be comfortable with it. Decorations. So these two images are kind of decorative purposes and small alterations. So if you decide you want to cut something out and add something onto it, this left showcase shows how this girl made a t-shirt and basically turned it into a halter top, I believe is the style, by cutting away at the neckline and the shoulders and adding in some lace to help seal that seam. The right one is also a different kind of decoration where she's just adding in lace. And so, like I said, you don't have to sew in order to alter something. I've also seen these same kind of things with, you glue it on, which might not sound ideal, but for some people it works better. There are also different kinds of tape that you can use, heat and bond tape. You've got hemline tape, so you don't have to know how to sew in order to make these alterations. I know you can get heat and bond and hemming tape at even your local Walmart if you have a sewing section at that Walmart. You can go to Joann's and you can find these, and it's literally just ironing it on. You can iron that material in between your seam and it's seamed together and it won't come apart. You can get heat and bond. It's double-sided. They have very specific instructions on how to use it, how to make sure it works. And that stuff will not come undone. You have to put a lot of force into it to make it come undone. So you can definitely, those items are great alternatives if you don't feel comfortable sewing right now. Sleeves. Sleeves are probably something that people think about on altering. Sleeves can be very difficult. This is one of the more challenging things to alter. So I'm going to try to explain it simply. If you decide that you need to alter your sleeves, whether they're too big or too small, I definitely recommend watching more videos to get a visual understanding as well before you do anything. I know I've made the mistake of trying to alter sleeves without understanding exactly what I'm altering, and I've totally messed up the garment. But so from this image, I hope you can see the left image. There are 2 black lines at the top of the shoulder and then at the bottom of that sleeve. Those lines are your biggest consideration factor of hemming your sleeve. You are not going to hem the inside of the seam on your shirt, actually, if you hem the sleeve. If you make your sleeve smaller or more form-fitting, you don't want to go in from the side of your shirt to make that sleeve line up, because then you're going to make that shirt significantly smaller on you and it might not fit later. So you actually want to adjust it from the shoulder if you adjust your sleeve. Adjusting from the shoulder will shorten it a little bit. It'll shorten that sleeve hole. So if you make the hole itself on your sleeve smaller by cutting or sewing in on the sleeve, that'll help it line up. I definitely recommend you make sure you measure everything. Measure your own armhole, measure the armhole that you're adjusting and what it's going into, and then sew accordingly to the shoulder so that everything lines up. Sleeves are very finicky, very, very, very finicky, and if they don't fit right, it's a very, very big hassle to get it to. If they don't measure correctly with each other, it can become a real big challenge as it becomes bumpy or bunchy. And it won't sit right. I've also had that struggle. Please learn from me. I don't want anyone else to want to scream internally. So on the right image, I hope you guys can see it, but on the right image is a very, very basic outline of what a sleeve looks like. I don't recommend simply drawing it. If you're making your own sleeve, let's say you're taking out a sleeve and you're changing it and putting in a different one. If you're making your own sleeve, I recommend having at least a pattern as a baseline. Again, as I say, sleeves are very, very finicky. So if the measurements are not right, it can be very, very difficult to set that sleeve in and get it to sit right on you. But the most basic way of adjusting it, you can see that black outline there. And there's some black dots over the top of that sleeve. That is the most basic way to change the shoulder of the sleeve. So if you need it to be a little wider or a little more narrow, say it's like a little too bunchy or too baggy at the top, you can narrow that sleeve a little bit, or you can widen it out if it's too tight on you. But altering that pattern can be very easy. You typically want to adjust your shoulder sizing just right there at the top. If you need to adjust the length, you don't want to adjust it at the top of the shoulder. You want to adjust it a little bit lower where that red line is. Or if it's already attached, obviously you can hem it from where it is. If you want to go from, if you want to go from wrist length and you want to go right down to your elbow, you can just hem it, cut and then hem it. But if you're going from a simple pattern, it's easier to go in from the pattern towards the top. Wow, my fingers sliding too. Does this make sense so far, or am I confusing everybody? Okay, I saw some blank stares, so I was like, oh no. Pants. Pants have a number of ways that you can adjust them. Most people will adjust at the waistline. If you want to add in elastic, you can absolutely add in elastic. Just open up the hole, take your pin and attach your elastic and slide it on through. I don't know if anyone knows that trick. That was something I learned. You just attach a pin to the end of your elastic, and then you can use that to slide it through your fabric. That you can feel that pin and have something to grip. That is the easiest and best way. I've been doing that since, the first thing I've ever made in my life was pajama pants. I learned how to do it with those pajama pants, and I still do it to this day with everything. I did it with this neckline here. I ran some extra fabric through so I could cinch it manually. And I'm 10 plus years into sewing. It's one that will never leave me. But so you could do that. If you're taking out the waistline and you're doing something different and you want to adjust from the top still, you can also add darts. Darts can be added into pants as well. So those triangles kind of at the top is kind of the idea of a dart if you're taking it in. Darts typically are done in a triangle kind of fashion. So you can add in those little darts at the top there if you want to do it that way. I've seen some people just take in from the side, and that's totally okay. You just have to be aware of your hips So if you go down through your hips and you go straight down all the way to the side, you want to make sure that it doesn't get too tight on your hips either. Or else we're going to have that same thing where you're going to have a rip seam and you're going to be really sad. And I'll be on the other side of Texas probably really sad for you too.
Yeah.
So other ways that you can adjust it. We have hemming, obviously. Hemming is the most simplest thing that you can adjust from the bottom. You can see at the bottom of the left picture that there are some red lines. And then you do the red and the black lines so you can see how you can take it in from the sides as well. So say you have like a regular straight bottom jeans and you want to turn them into skinny jeans. Wow, I can't believe I forgot the word skinny. Yes, skinny jeans, absolutely. Thank you guys for having my brain cell today. So if you want to turn them into skinny jeans, that is a very simple way that you can adjust it. Like I said, just make sure on your higher up parts, say like if you start at your knee and you want to cinch it in, but make it a little more form-fitting, tighten it a little bit. You want to make sure you don't start too high up where it becomes too tight on you higher up on that garment. You don't want to make your hips too tight or your knees too tight. You want to make sure you can still bend your knees. So I would pin your pants if you're going to do this, and make sure you can bend your knees in the garment. I've definitely seen people who've just gone like, I want it this size, and then they sew it all down and they cut the fabric and then they try it on and then they can't bend their knees. So they can't sit down in those pants. And you're like, well, it looks good at least, but can I wear it anywhere else? No. So on the right side, the right image, you have an image of obviously what pants are, and you have a very basic pattern of what the pant pattern looks like, for anybody who's never opened up a pattern before. And so if you want to adjust your pants, the curved line there at the top of your pants, that is where your crotch is. So I don't recommend adjusting that seam unless it is literally like very baggy at your crotch itself. So if you sew in that line, it makes it tighter and tighter and tighter around your hips too. And you don't want to be uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to be uncomfortable either. I know, you don't want everything too tight on you. Oh, did I hit that? Oh no, I think I hit the end of my lecture of like very basic alterations. But does anybody have questions? I saw your hand first, so.
How would you go about adding Velcro to an existing garment?
So to add Velcro, does it already have a zipper that you're changing it to a Velcro closure, or is it just you need to open it and then make a Velcro closure? Either one? Well, if there's already a zipper, then you can use what you've got there. You can take out that zipper and then add in that Velcro. You will, because of a zipper adds in just a smidgen of extra room. It's about, I think it's like half an inch or something. So if you take it away, the Velcro is gonna make the fabric overlap. So if your garment's already very form-fitting on you, you'll have to be very careful about how you add that in. But you can just take out the zipper and replace that zipper with your Velcro and just sew it into each side and then overlap it. If you don't already have a zipper or a closure of some sort already there that you're changing, then you will have to first decide where you're putting your Velcro, decide where you're going to put any closure, guys. I strongly recommend measuring it out, pre-measuring it, pre-cut your Velcro, make sure it's all in the right place, marking where you put it, pin it all into place, and then cut that fabric. And you can cut it open. I recommend hemming it real quick first, so you don't have that raw edge and then it frays on you and then you're sad later because it comes undone at the stitches. But do a quick hem and then you can sew in that Velcro, whether it's sewing or it's an adhesive Velcro. You might want to add some extra glue or something to it, but add it in, and that, like I said, that Velcro will overlap, so you will lose a little bit of room on that garment. It'll make it a little tighter. I imagine probably you'll only lose about an inch or two, but as long as the garment's not super snug on you, it should be okay still. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
My question is, how would I got a dress yesterday and it's too tight right here. I can't get the zipper up and it's along my side. So and the back is elastic. What would you recommend for that?
The back is elastic?
Yes.
Oh, no. Does the front have elastic?
No.
Does the side have
The
elastic?
front does not have any way to move. The back is completely elastic. It's just super tight where all like the fabric's bunched up to make the dress.
Oh, okay, yeah. So then what I would do at that point is what I was saying earlier about a panel. You could add in a panel at the side, and I would recommend, which is going to take a little bit of more work, but I would recommend doing a little bit of math, seeing how much you need to add in total, and then adding in on both sides so it's even. If you add on only one side, unfortunately with shirts and dresses and stuff, it can get a little wonky if it's only adjusted on one side. So add in like a little straight panel down the side if you can find a matching fabric, or if you can add to it. You can always add decorations and beads and lace and other things. If you
It's all going to be underneath the armpit. I was just thinking of adding like a corset style on both sides.
Yeah, you could absolutely do that. You can add in, you could do a ribbon or something or lacing, and you can definitely make that a corset style as well. If you need to add in a lot more, that would still look phenomenal. Any other questions?
So right now my pants are tucked into a hair tie, and I need to put elastic so that they can stay like that and I don't just shove them in there. However, my entire body can fit through my pant leg. So how exactly do I put elastic in there without it looking kind of odd? Because I know when you put elastic, it bunches up and it doesn't look right all the time.
So there are different ways that you can do that kind of bunching depending on the style that you want. I'm covered up by belts and things, but I've done the same thing. I've got elastic here, and oh no, I messed up my belt. But so I do have the same elastic here. What I did on this garment was that I did a very, if you have a sewing machine, you go your highest setting on the stitch length, and it's basically what I can't remember what the technique is called off the top of my head right now, but so you do a very long stitch all the way across your hemline. So you can do what you call gathering it, and so you can then take one of those strings at the end once you finish sewing it all the way down, and basically pull and gather all that fabric together until it's like a little bit bigger than what you want, and then you can sew in the elastic to then cinch in that last little bit, so then it fits you a little better. If that doesn't, if that's not the style that you like and it's a little, too bunchy or it just doesn't look right, you can also pleat it and then kind of elastic it a little bit, which might be a little more ideal for you. So the pleats are where, good old handy Google. Pleats. To show a picture so I can at least get some, to put an idea in your head. But you can literally pleat it where you fold it accordion style, and then you add in your elastic. I have a feeling that might still be a little bunchy once you add in the elastic. Gathering it typically is a little easier, but you could always pleat it and then elastic it in certain areas so it cinches on the sides instead of all the way around too. So you still have that pleated look, but you can still get that secure cinching around your ankle. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions, guys? Yeah.
So I'm looking to take a fitted spandex shirt and add a not so stretchy yoke and then a big cuff on each side. And I know I would lose the stretch of the neck. So I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to put the closure back into the shirt, because the stretchy one doesn't have a closure.
You would have to manually add in a closure then. You could add in something as simple as a button. to manually hold it closed. You could add in a zipper in the back, depends kind of what the look that you want, and whether it's the front or the back. I like using, you could use something like a hook and eye, which is like a round piece and a long piece to kind of go through. You could use, there are other versions of hook and eyes too, where they like, and pick it up and then close it, where it's kind of like they literally hook like that. You could, what?
A bra hook.
You could use a bra hook. You could also use like snaps too. Kind of depends on where you want to go. I've also done ones where I've done like, I put in a grommet and then I just add in a piece of lacing and then I tie it closed. So there's a lot of different things you could do. If possible, if you're adding in the yoke, you could also just buy a stretch fabric for that yoke, zigzag stitch your way through everything. And then it might help fit, you might not lose that stretch then in that case. Does this make sense? Does it give you an idea at least? Okay, hopefully I can be a little helpful. I saw another hand somewhere. Yeah, what's up?
What is something that you're trying to like add a panel on to make it bigger? Has like two, it makes like two different pieces of fabric, and like if some of it like kind of frayed really easily a lot.
Some of it frays easily a lot? Okay, well, first thing I recommend is there's this very nice thing at Joann's, and I assume probably at many other fabric stores. It's called fray check. I definitely recommend hemming and folding over your seams so you don't get all that frayage, but fray check is a very nice material that you use that you literally just put it right on the edge of that fabric and it makes it stiff. I don't recommend putting it on anything that's seen, because on some fabrics it can alter the color a little bit, but it's really good with fabrics like that can fray. And it's not going to be a permanent fix that won't, permanently make it never fray again. But it definitely slows down that risk and that chance of fraying. So you can do that, and then you can sew your garment and then hem it, finish that hem. Ultimately, you will probably want to finish that hem in some form or fashion in order to prevent that fraying from reoccurring and continuing. But it is a good way to just stop it for a while. And you can add more as you need, but you really don't need a lot. It's like there's a bottle this big, and I've literally had a bottle this big for at least 5 years now, and I still haven't run out of it. A little really goes a long way. Sound good? Any other questions, guys? Yes.
For the panel one, I have a dress that's kind of like two parts, like a bottom part and kind of a skirt from Goddess Mendoza.
Uh-huh.
If I wanted to put in a panel on each side, would I be able to do it only on the bottom part because the skirt's not really straight with it?
Yeah, so what you would have to do is if you add in a panel, you have to still remove the skirt. If you don't want to add in a panel to the skirt, you have to remove the skirt and then add in your panel onto the bodice. The tricky part of that is that you have to make sure that the skirt will still fit. So if you add in that panel on the bodice, that's that much room that you've added on that the skirt doesn't have. So if that skirt fit exactly on what the outfit is wearing right now, it might not fit with that extra panel that's added on, whether it's 1 inch or 4 inches or any sizing. So you might have to still add in some room on the skirt, or even if the skirt's really long, then you might be able to cut the hole of the skirt where it's going to attach at the waist or the hip. You can cut it just a little bit bigger on the holes of these skirts. A little goes a long way. You don't need to cut out huge inches of the inside of the skirt in order to make it big enough to fit your bodice. So you might need to just make minor adjustments in that regard if you add in a panel and then you're removing and then adding the skirt back in. Am I on the right page for this? Did I answer this? Okay, makes sense. Does anyone else have any other questions for me? Yeah.
You were showing different types of hems
in your opinion, which is the strongest hold when you're choosing to make your own garments?
Well, it depends on what you've got. Depends on what fabric you're using. And there are so many factors that go into what hem you choose, and literally your needles and thread can change the hem too. But what fabric are you looking at, maybe?
Honestly, we're just kind of getting started on deciding what we're gonna do for next year.
Okay.
So I know that one of the materials that I was thinking about using, similar to like Spanx type of material, like for leggings.
Okay, for leggings, so you have to do a zigzag stitch. Like it's just a simple back and forth stitch. I recommend the zigzag stitch being very close together. I like to do a wider stitch, but the length is shorter. That way it is a little more secure. That is the simplest and most secure for any kind of stretch fabric that you can do. There are alternative sewing machine stitches, but like the settings for every sewing machine for it are so different. So I definitely recommend, as like just getting started, a zigzag stitch is your go-to stitch. That will definitely still make your garment secure. It'll make it safe. It'll totally be fine. Stitches won't pop on you or anything. So you want to definitely go for that. But there are alternative stitches that are set into your sewing machine that are that might be beneficial in longer term usage. But I would recommend definitely looking into what stitches your sewing machine offer, because some offer a lot more and some offer a lot less. And I know personally there's a lot of like hidden stitches or whatever that they have set in there that I don't use. I know, like I said, I'm over 10 years into this. I still use my zigzag stitch. I've just moved on to a serger. And if you're going for the long run, for stretch fabrics, serging is very, very ideal. It's a lot more secure. But sergers are very expensive, so please don't think about that right now. But it's a long-term usage is something that might be a good idea if you decide that I want to continue sewing things and making things and doing this for a long time. In the first year or two, you don't need to worry about that. A zigzag will be perfect for you for stretch fabrics. A simple straight stitch, a plain seam, is like your standard seam across the board. That's what I use for almost everything, and then it's just deciding on how I want to hem it and change it. Your stitch settings also just change everything. You don't want a stitch that's too long, because it makes, depending on what you're using, a longer stitch will make the stitch itself looser and more, the risk is there that it'll split, or it'll just kind of come apart, or it'll just unravel on itself if the stitch is too big. But smaller stitches, if you go really, really, really tiny, then it kind of gets stuck in this fashion of if you mess up your stitch. God knows I've done it 5,000 times. I'm 10 years in and I still do it. That my seam ripper is still my best friend. Makes me sad, but hey. And like if you go really, really small stitches and you mess up that seam and it's just, oh, this is not where I want it to be, I need to adjust it, I need to take it out a little more, you've got to unstitch teeny tiny stitches, and you'll just never want to sew again after that. I have had days where it's just like, nope, that's it for me. I'm stopping after this project. And here we are somehow. So I definitely recommend like a happy medium on your length. If you top stitch something down, so if you have your, I'll just pull up a picture. I'll show you a rolling hem. A rolling hem is definitely your most common hem. Let's see if there's a good image that will show up. This is a good picture. So this kind of hem is called a rolling hem. So you literally fold it over and then fold it over again and then stitch it. That'll be your best hemline across the board usually. You can do that on your edges. You can do it on your regular seams. It is very secure, it's very safe, it's very simple. It's harder to do on curves, so if you have anything that is a drastic curve, say like around the breast line, you'll probably want to try a different hem. Or you can still do that hem, but you just have to cut the fabric of that hemline a little bit so it allows that give, so the fabric can move with you still. But that is like your simplest, your easiest. Like I still do these hems, like, you know, across the board for everybody of every expert level, excuse me. This is like a very common go-to hem for anybody that sews. Yeah, does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
No, you
Okay,
did.
okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, any other questions, guys? No? Okay, well then, oh, yes.
You keep putting on a thread, like you calculate the thread wrong repeatedly. What's the good way so that it's not obvious you kept messing that up?
Sorry, repeat the question.
And like for this instance, I was sewing a zipper on a purse. I keep calculating how much thread I need wrong, and then have to go and add in new thread each time. What's a good way to hide that you're doing that?
Oh yeah, and purses, like it's probably a leather-like material, huh?
Yeah, I'm hand sewing this because I don't have a sewing machine.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
I'm sewing it into the holes that are already made by the sewing machine.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would do the same thing. I would just cover it up by literally going in through those same holes, because once you puncture a hole, that hole's never going away. There's no way to get rid of holes from leather. Unfortunately, some fabrics like leather, pleather, like your leather-like spandex, like of your cat suits, like Catwoman's cat suit, those fabrics are very unforgiving. If you punch a hole and then you decide, oh, this isn't right, those holes are permanent. There's no way to make them go away. I've done the same thing. I go back in and I just go over the same holes. If you're using still, like even if you don't have enough thread and you're hand sewing it, you don't have to necessarily unstitch it. If you just run out, you can just continue to add back on and continue from where you left off. If you're adding a different colored thread, then you could, make it more thematic. If you want to go bigger on that, then you could just change your stitching and literally use a different stitch to cover up the previous holes. But then you're making new holes, and if you don't like it in the end, that makes it a little more difficult. But I would literally just go in through the same holes and try to avoid making new holes and use that, the same colored thread and just continue where you left off. Hand stitching, uses so many different, amounts of thread. So it's a little harder to gauge, but I would, when you run out of thread, just knot it and then just, add on the next one and just continue where you left off rather than unstitching everything and, trying to restart it. Am I answering the question or?
Yeah, and I guess the other part of that was, is it secure enough? Because that pocket, it was actually a pocket that the zipper was on.
It should still be secure if you're using the same holes.
I was kind of using more or less back stitch to fix the fact that I kept messing up all the counts.
Are you removing the thread when you run out of thread, or?
No, so I would just tie off the thread and then basically use the back stitch underneath it so that I could hide that I had to start a new thread.
Oh, okay. So, well, I would definitely when you tie it, just do it on the inside. So if I see that you've got this much left, I like to put my stitch and thread it through, and then it's on the inside, and then tie it so the knot's on the inside, and then start my next one so it starts up right on the next stitch, so it looks like you've just continued it. So everything where it ends and where it starts is on the inside, and then you don't have to try to cover it up. You just continue where you left off rather than trying to back stitch it. Which you can, it just adds more stitching, and then you've just got more layers of stitching, which might make it more obvious that you're adding on more.
Yeah, I'm just really afraid of the stitch breaking after.
No, if you knot it and you secure it, it should still be okay. You can, I know some people, if you feel like you're worried that the thread is going to pull through, I've seen some people where they take like a hot glue gun and they just add like a single bead of glue to that knot. And then once it solidifies and it's hard and everything, it won't pull through the fabric. So in regards to the leather of the purse. So that will be bigger than the hole, so that thread won't be able to come through and come undone. I hope that helps. I hope that gives you a good idea on what to do.
Yeah, it does, because my way of doing it has led to me not finishing it.
Well, hopefully with this you'll be able to continue and finish. Is there any other questions, guys? No? Alright. So we actually, yeah, we're just 4 minutes till the end of the panel. So thank you all so much for coming. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. Alright, thank you guys. If you have any other questions, you can come out.